Welcome to the Conservation Board meeting of Southampton Town for October 22nd, 2025. I would invite everyone to rise for the salute to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do the acceptance of the minutes another time when we have more people here. Public hearings A024077, Colin Heffron.
Good evening. Michael Shiano from InterScience Research Associates on behalf of the applicant. So I guess I will ask first, how much detail do you want me to go into about the project, since I know that the board is familiar with it? You had asked us to make some changes. We submitted plans that had those changes on it, so I can go through some of this stuff or all of it, however much you want me to talk about.
The discussion that board members had with staff was informal and not complete.
Okay.
So it was, it's good to really start from scratch.
Of course, yep. So the initial application that had been submitted to the board was the proposal to lift the existing house up to FEMA elevation, but keep it in place. A deck was proposed around the perimeter of the house, and the location of that deck was the location and shape of that deck at the time was proposed based on what my clients thought was a pre-existing non-conforming patio. What we had since found out, after the Environment Division's initial review, was that that patio had actually been constructed without permits, and what had happened was that that patio it was present on a prior approval when the cottage was rebuilt, and so they just had assumed, because it was on that permit, that that had also been permitted, but it hadn't been. There had been a previous patio there that had extended actually further out, so there was some discussion back and forth between the Environment Division and my office regarding, okay, so do we get to keep any of it? So there was some back and forth with that. Mr. Shea had provided us with two alternatives. One that would ask to relocate the house farther back from the wetlands, one and increase the buffer size, and also and another one that would have kept the house in place, but there would have been a reduced size deck. So I went back to my clients, we went back and forth with it, and we came back with what we thought was a reduced size deck from what we originally proposed, and also an increased size buffer that was larger than the buffer that Marty had requested of us. But the house was still staying in place, the deck was still staying in place, and then prior to the previous meeting of this board, at the first public hearing, this board had requested that we consider a practical alternative that would increase the setback of the deck and increase the setback of the house, because we are moving it, we are lifting it to make it FEMA compliant. Could we move it back? And the recommendation that was made to our office was to move the structures back so that the proposed deck was at a minimum the same setback as the existing house was. So at the last submission that we have made to this board included taking everything up and moving it back so that the existing house is at a setback of 27.69 feet. We are now proposing the deck at 28 feet. The house has moved back to a setback of 35 feet, I believe, so that's increasing that setback by 7 feet. The prior increased size to the buffer that we had provided is still proposed. So in comparison to, actually, Kristen, can you just hand out that? So this is just a table that provides what the differences in the decks were over time, as well as what the difference in buffer was over time, just so you have some scope as to what we're proposing versus what Marty's alternative was, and versus what the original approval was. Yes?
Distance between the deck and the buffer?
Distance between the deck and the wetlands is 28 feet. Distance between the deck and the new proposed buffer is 4 feet. So previously, because we had moved the house back, we did reconfigure it. So the prior plan, concept plan that we had submitted had some additional buffer in this area towards the street. And because we then had more space over here, we took that, we moved it over so that we're buffering the house. And we placed it 4 feet away from the deck so that there's still room to walk around in case there's maintenance that has to be done. And then there's also a proposed 4-foot wide path to allow people to get to the dock. On the table that Kristen Laselli from InterScience just passed out, you can see that the difference between the deck, and some of these numbers are approximate because we measured the plans that, the sketch plans that Marty had provided to us. The decks that he had suggested that we would have were, sorry, 1 second. Okay. Was 1,163 feet, but they were kind of more on the southern side of the house and not between the wetlands and the house. Our proposed decks are now, including the deck that is at the front of the house, which has decreased in size, and the deck that is on the water side is now 992 square feet. So we not only reduced it from what our original proposal was, but also it is smaller than what Marty had requested of us in total deck area. And we are and the buffer that we are now proposing is both 259 square feet larger than what Marty had asked for, and when you compare it to the existing buffer that's on the property, it's 4,217 square feet. So we are, because the deck is on the wetland side of the house, we felt that some additional mitigation, we wanted to offer additional mitigation to try and balance that out, and this is what we've come up with. So in addition to moving everything back so that the proposed deck is now at the same setback as the existing house, which moves everything back about 7 to 8 feet. This plan includes upgrading the septic system to an IAOWTS, which increases the setback for leaching structures from 54 feet from the existing cesspool to 100 feet to the proposed leaching structures. And we have the buffer. All of the existing structures that are currently inside of the buffer or near the wetlands are going to be taken out, which includes a retaining wall. There's a fence that's adjacent to the buffer. There's a existing propane tank. All of those are going to be taken out. And the fill is minimal, only for the need to lift for the septic system. There is a proposed garage, detached garage, and pervious driveway reconfiguration, but those are set back farther than the other items. So based on this, we think that this, through the work with this board and with the town, we think that we've come up, yes, I'm sorry.
On the drawing, I don't see any steps from the deck.
We tried to do a concept plan. It was really quick that we put it together. So the steps would be on the north side of the house, and they will be on the south side of the house. So we just didn't show the lines for the steps, but this includes both deck and steps. So it's not,
Well, the steps, in other words, the steps would end within the boundary line that you, okay.
correct.
I noticed your existing septic is proposed to remain.
The existing septic is located where the proposed house is going to be, so that is being removed. There is another septic that serves the cottage that's going to remain.
Okay,
And that was put in relatively recently, probably, I can't remember right now in front of me when this was permitted, but it was within the last 10 years. It was right before the 2019 change to the code that would have required it. So this is still in good condition. So, and because we're not doing anything to this side, we've left that as that proposal. The cottage septic system will be a standard septic system, but the one for the house is going to be an IA.
so you're going to raise the house and move it back a little bit? And put a second story on it?
Correct. And the current house has fewer than 4 bedrooms. The addition would only add, I believe that there's 2 or 3 bedrooms in the existing house. Part of the work that is going to happen is that there's going to be renovations inside of the house. So the total number of bedrooms is 4. So even with the second story addition, so the septic system that we had previously proposed and that is currently proposed is the same size, because a 1 to 4 bedroom system is the same size according to the health department. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
And you don't anticipate raising the house and starting from scratch?
From what so I have some information. Today, after receiving Marty's note that this board would want to see some details about how it's going to be done. I spoke with the architect, I spoke with the contractor, and they believe that the house is structurally sound enough to be able to be moved and lifted and have the second story placed on top. They do need to speak more in depth with their structural engineer about the whole idea of it, but they have, the general contractor that is working on it they are carpenters as like their main stay of business. So they have, and they've looked at the house, and they wouldn't have, what they told me is that they wouldn't have proposed this if they didn't think that it could be lifted and moved. Or it couldn't be lifted at first, but then moving it is just a matter of after you lift it up on the hydraulic jacks, you essentially just put, after you demolish the foundation underneath it, you then put dollies underneath it and move it back, build the new foundation, and then lower it back down, and the new foundation will be, and actually, I'll give this to you, because you're, sorry. You would ask for kind of a construction protocol, so working with the contractor and the architect today, we put together a description of going through from
Thank you.
before the project starts. So the initial thing that's going to happen is that we will have to speak with a house moving company, either Dawn House Movers or Davis House Movers, to get just the sense of what specifically for this house, because every house is a little bit different, but what specifically they need to do for this house, if there's anything more detailed. But in general, this is the procedure that is followed whenever they lift and move a house. And then we've also included just kind of the details for this board of saying, this is how the second floor will be put on, so that you know that it's only a vertical increase. There's not going outside of the footprint. And in addition to that, there's a certification letter from the architect stating that the new house will be compliant with the 2025 building code, which is the one that will be in effect when we actually get around to building that.
Just on the steps in the process, I would think, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I am, that you would put the pilings in first?
So I believe that the steps that it will be, as we've outlined on this, is that we will, the house will be lifted first, because because the house is only moving back 8 feet, so we'd have to lift it up, demolish the existing foundation, demolish the existing brick patio, and that will be done from a front to back orientation, so that you're limiting the amount of disturbance that's on this side of the house, on this side of the patio and the house. And once the foundation is done, then it would, the pilings that are going to be used are helical piles. So either it will be before the house is moved back, the new foundation, including the helical piles and grade beams, would be installed, and then the house will be moved back and placed on it, or the house will be moved back first, and everything would be done underneath the house, and then the house will be lowered back down. But it's helical piles instead of being pile-driven, so we don't have to drive any piles first, and also we don't have to move the house somewhere else to bring in the pile driver to put it in, because they can all just be screwed in place.
Okay.
So, when was this house built?
The original house was built, it's a good question. I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't have that information in front of me.
If I may, 1960.
1960. And do you know the wall components of the uprights on the walls?
I do not, no.
For a one-story house built in 1960, it's most likely they're 2x4s. They really didn't, they went bigger to 2x6s when the code changed for more insulation. They didn't usually talk about insulation much in 1960, not like they do today. And then you're gonna make this new addition and the whole house compliant with the current building code, which is gonna require 2x6 walls. Do you expect to take those 2x4 walls out or add 2x6s?
I am not sure. I know that, let me just check the letter that the architect had provided to us. I can only assume, based on the fact, the letter that was provided to us by the architect, which indicates that it's going to be compliant with the 2025 Energy Conservation Code. In order to meet that energy conservation code, the framing of the existing house theoretically would have to be changed so that any new installation would meet those current codes, because a 2x4 framing would likely not be able to house the insulation required to meet the new code. So the plans do include renovation of the existing house, but I'm just answering your question, so.
Would you have an alternate plan in mind if something were to happen to the house while you're raising it and moving it and renovating it? You have assurance from the contractor and the architect, and I have no reason to doubt either one of them. However, there's a possibility. So is there an alternate plan if that should happen?
There is not. I have attempted to discuss this with them, and I had asked whether they would be able to be here today to answer some of these questions, and they were not available to come here to speak about this. But if that was the case and something happened where it then became the reconstruction of a house, then that would change the nature of the project, and we would have to get modifications from both the building department and this board as well. So I can only, at this point, I can only operate on the insurances that I've been given based on information from the New York State licensed architect and the town licensed home improvement contractor.
I think you picked up the vibe that this board is very suspicious that this is not going to withstand.
So is it specifically the second story addition that's on top of it?
No, quite frankly, what I'm thinking is, you can do it. But it's going to be slow and expensive. You can do it. So you can get your professionals to say, you can do it, you can do it. And they can. But I don't know who wants to. I don't know who wants to rebuild a structure and have something nice, which is what I'm sure your client is interested in. So when we look at this as there's the house, and you want to put it in the same place, and then we say move it back a little bit, so you do, versus if there was nothing there, and you want to put it back, put something there, then we start to look, where's the best place to put it? And it changes the way we think about it. So the hesitancy in my mind is, as we go through this, is that we're going to potentially permit something that, when in the end, we'll look back and say, well, that doesn't make any sense, we should have done something else. So I'm trying to think of what is that something else that we should do now? Because I'm kind of parsimonious myself, and I wouldn't do that. But I might come before this board to do that because that's the way to get the house where you want it. So there's a strategy here, but we have to relax Chapter 325 standards to achieve that, because the standard is something you probably may not be able to meet anyway, the 100-foot setback for structures and 75 for the buffer. So I just want to make sure we're thinking about this the right way so that we can, in the end, have a project here that is faithful to your clients, and they have something that they want and are happy with, but is also faithful to Chapter 325, so the town is being a good steward of the resources. So I feel like there's more information here that's not articulated. I'm trying to figure out how we can make the best decision.
See, from some of the way we've been structuring our conversation, if the house were newer and had current 2x6 framing, we would feel more comfortable with the fact that it's going to be easier to do because you don't have to rebuild the entire structure to now change from 2x4s to 2x6s or sister them up or whatever you need to do, shore up the first floor before you even put a second floor on it. But you're moving it, and then you're having to add to it, and then there's still no guarantee that it's going to withstand any of this. So we're going to go through all this work, and then something's going to happen to it, and you're going to say the first floor wasn't viable, something happened, and then you're going to have to start from scratch. It seems like it would be less money and easier just to start from scratch in the first place. And just say, nice house, but goodbye house. Start with something fresh. I don't see where it's practical to do what you're doing and move it and keep it the way it is, where the house was built in 1960.
I understand that. I also understand that we have had this application in and submitted to the town of Southampton since December of 2024. So, to some extent, we have worked with the town. I am working with the intent and the nature of the intent of my client. At the moment, the plan as proposed is improving the conditions of what is there right now. Just by dint of proposing an IA system, we are drastically increasing, and we're not increasing the footprint of the house, nor technically the use of the house, because even though we're putting a second floor on it, the number of bedrooms is still less than 5, so it's not an increase in use from the eyes of the Suffolk County Health Department. So I understand your feeling on the feasibility of this, but I can only operate based on the information that that I have from licensed professionals, and also take into account the upgrade of the septic system, the almost more than doubling the size of the buffer from what exists today, increase in the setback of the house and all of the structures, removing an existing illegal patio, in addition to several other structures. So from an environmental perspective, I believe that this site will be better than it is today. Is it the best that it could potentially be? No, but this is also a property that has a house and has had a house on it since 1960, prior to the enactment of Chapter 325. So based on the merits of the application by itself, I would hope that the board, and especially considering the amount of time and money that my client has spent to get to this point in October of 2025, I would hope that the board would give us some consideration.
Just remembering also that there's a common misconception that coming in with a project that's better than what's there is what 325 means, and 325 doesn't mean come in with something better than what's there. There are standards, there are distances, there are all kinds of things involved that don't necessarily mean just because you're coming in with something better that allows us to approve it. We look at that, certainly, we let it temper what we're looking at as far as the specifics of any particular project, but coming in with something better is not the main goal you should come with. You should come with the goal of trying to comply with 325 as best you can, request relief where you can't meet it, or explanation why things are a hardship, but just coming in with something better should not be the main goal of anybody coming in front of us. We certainly understand that, but that's not going to make us change our mind on everything.
I would also just like to note that I understand that.
Good. Good to
A
know.
redundant question. Did you at any time propose the idea of a demolition and a brand-new house being built?
We have not been given the opportunity to provide such alternatives. And also, I don't feel comfortable with talking about things that I would have done if given a different circumstance, because right now I am here on behalf of my client and attempting to propose what they have asked me to propose here. And so I guess at this point, if the board is not comfortable with moving forward with it, then I would seek some guidance as to what specifically you are looking for. I know that you have provided some stuff already regarding more details about maybe the existing structure, so that we can confirm that it is the structure that we believe it to be based on its age. But also, if this board believes that essentially what this is going to be at the end of the day is a demo and reconstruction, or more likely a Ship of Theseus situation where we're essentially building it completely up the way that it is right now, just with new materials, then what does that mean?
Well, looking at
And I would also, I'm sorry, and I would also just like to add that I wish that I had had the opportunity to have this conversation last month. And I know that this board asked that we come back with a practical alternative, but I also know that this type of conversation is helpful for me to then bring back to my client. So based on us interacting with that the comments of, can you also move the house back? Because that was the direct request of ourselves, which we did. And that was the only thing that was mentioned. My client thought, okay, we can just do that, right? And I was like, I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure if that's the only thing, because I haven't had a chance to discuss it with them. So I understand where this board was coming from, that we needed to provide the minimum practical alternative, but it puts me in a difficult position as well.
But not discussing with us before about starting with something brand new and getting rid of what's there. Your client, from the time they came to you, you never had a conversation with them, but, well, this seems like a lot of work to move and add up. Have you considered what it would be cost-wise and logistically to just demolish and start from scratch? That never was a conversation you had with the client before you even put an application in?
They came to us with,
They said, this is what we want, and this, we're not gonna talk about anything else. So then you come to us, and we ask for something else, and you haven't discussed it with them, so now we're going back to them.
I have, I mean, I discussed it based on the information. And yes, I have had some of these conversations with my client, but and I understand where you guys are coming from, but I'm just asking that, I'm just indicating the fact that it would have been nice if I had the opportunity to find out some of your thoughts about the kind of Ship of Theseus situation with this current house prior. Because I have also seen people propose a house that is moved back, propose a completely brand-new house that is moved back 5 feet, 10 feet from the existing location, and have it be a completely new house, and that has been approved in other circumstances. So in this case, the idea is that they're taking an existing house and lifting it up and moving it back, based on the input from this board. So that was the optics of it.
I have some other thoughts I would like to discuss later. I'd like Marty to give his report.
Of course.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. I'll be somewhat brief, as the applicant has provided, an accurate history and description of the project and review process. I would mention that one of the challenges that was faced by my office and the applicant is that initially we were looking at a different plan. We were looking simply at elevation of the existing home, which I always encourage. Building of a small addition to the home on the landward side, and construction of a deck. The preliminary advisory report of mine dated May 6, 2025, had provided alternate sketches for consideration by the applicant. But at that time, because we were simply looking at elevation of the existing home, my central focus was the deck. And you'll see on file there's two alternative sketches that show reconfigured decks. One has consequence relocation of the home, and the second just as consequence of significant repositioning and scaling back of the deck. Notwithstanding that the applicant's goal initially was to retain the house in the current footprint and not build a second-story addition, I had sought modifications to the plan that would position the main body of the deck at no closer than 40 feet. So my sketches showed two different possible deck reconfigurations. One which asks the applicant to consider relocation of the home as part of that process, and second called for reconfiguration with retention of the existing footprint. Because initially the applicant was not planning to build a second-story addition, I was somewhat hesitant about asking the applicant to consider positioning the elevated home further landward on the property. This is a large piece of property, and of course, it's an opportunity to shift the home a little bit further landward. And if that was done, that change should not compromise scenic views as enjoyed by the house, because the shoreline in front of the house is open, and that's perhaps the reason why the applicant has sought to construct a new deck on the immediate seaside of the home, because that's where the most beneficial views are of the water. So, not to be repetitive, but the challenge here is whether or not, in the end, as was discussed, whether or not the house will need to be virtually fully demolished and reconstructed. And if so, we're looking at a different project. And then in all likelihood, I would recommend that the house be shifted a little bit further back. There's not, because the home is backed by a large swimming pool and extensive patio that was permitted by this board, which was conditioned upon establishment of the smaller existing covenanted buffer. There's not that much of an opportunity to shift the home much further back. Of course, if we were looking at demolition and reconstruction, we would also potentially look at different configurations in terms of the house layout, and that can be beneficial in achieving greater setback. So it's sounding to me like the applicant needs to get some additional information from the contractor and the engineer so that we're absolutely sure whether or not the existing house can be retained, and that it can withstand elevation and building of a second-story addition and made to be code compliant without significant demolition. At my request, the applicant had provided a drawing that identifies the exterior walls, that identifies any walls that would have to be demolished and removed. They're not present, with the exception of one area where there may be a bow window. That drawing is indicating that the exterior walls will be retained. So it may be beneficial to this board to get some additional information from the contractor and the engineer before rendering a decision on the current plan. Thank you.
So, I like it when it's a win-win, when everybody feels they've got a better deal. More, better quality, cheaper, all kinds of attributes. I would like to adjourn this let me just say, I think we should adjourn this. At the same time, I want to be careful that it's your client's money, it's not my money. It's your client's vision, it's not my vision. So I want to respect that. So if you really want to close tonight, we can discuss that too. But this is why I think we should adjourn it. You've moved your thinking over the course of the last little while, weeks, months here, and talked to the staff before it got to us for much discussion, and moved your thinking to a lot of things, to now your point of actually moving it back, changing the deck configuration. You're in a state of flux here. If this is really what you want, my suggestion is stick with it. But there's a lot of chopping in this house, there's a lot of pieces here and filling in here and there and moving it. There's a lot of what I would characterize as motion that is not real cost effective. And moving a house isn't really cost effective. It moves from here to there, but in the end, you still got the same thing. What I would look at if it was me is leave that, that's an alternative, it's a possibility. But make believe that wasn't there. And then what is the dream house of your clients? And where would it be? And what we're looking for is more buffer. I'm not saying how much. The fear is we don't dare do anything more because we're going to give up more than we want to give up. I don't know how to move that fear off the table. And that's what I've been thinking about. Which is why I said, if you really want that house, leave it there. But if there's a possibility your clients might want something different that's starting from scratch, so they can design where each room in the house is actually going to be and the actual footprint and layout and where the decks are going to be, there are a lot of possibilities in this property. I think there's a way to start from scratch, change the configuration of the house, move it a little closer to Franklin Avenue, get a little more buffer, and still leaving the IA system there, but moving that walkway to the other side of the house seems a little awkward in my thinking. I would put it closer to the structure for bringing in groceries and a lesser walk in the rain. But this is just my thinking. If any of that resonates with you, then I'd be open to adjourning this, to have a frank discussion and see if that's really what they want. And if it isn't, come up with what you really want. So when you get done, you got something that you said, yeah, that's really what I want to do.
Are you finished? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's, I'm trying to get that thought out. So,
I don't know whether you are able to answer this question. If the second floor wasn't part of it, so the second floor was added by the clients at kind of the 11th hour, like 3 weeks before our public hearing, because of the amount of time that it had taken to get to that point. They were doing their own cost-benefit analysis. I didn't actually have a chance to speak with them about it. It was communicated through the contractor and the architect. And we had, since you're asking what my advice was to them on other occasions, I would just like to let you know, we told them this is not a good idea in terms of the optics of this, and also, do you know whether you can do it or not? So one thought that I have is whether I go back to them and say, okay, your original proposal was just to lift the house, fix it up a little bit. And if they're only fixing it up a little bit and not opening the roof of the house, that means that they don't have to bring it to, that it changes the nature of the amount of work that they have to do to the house. So the structure and everything changes, because they don't have to necessarily meet the current energy code and all that, because they don't go over the substantial reconstruction value requirements under the building construction chapter of this town. So that changes things. And since it sounds like that, the idea of demo and reconstruction, even in the same footprint or size, is you would want to see it move back farther and an additional buffer if that was the case. If going back to the original proposal of just lifting the existing house and moving it back and then building a deck around it, if that was the case, what would your perception of that be?
I like a second story because it makes more efficient use of the space. You get double the living space, the same footprint. And the second story is not a big deal in my thinking about this whole thing. I think the biggest thing is, what did your client really want? What we look for is, many times, is more buffer. When I look at this, it looks like there's some inefficiencies there that I wonder why they're being done that way. So I don't really have a clear feeling to answer your question,
Understood.
but maybe others do.
Well, another alternative that you could discuss with them, because now we have raised the issue, is a demo and a rebuilt house. I mean, it's wide open now, so you can have that discussion with them. I see potential, Harry mentioned bringing the house a little bit closer towards Franklin Avenue, which would give you more buffer, and they could probably retain the same size of the house. So there is lots of alternatives here, and I guess we haven't exhausted all of the practical alternatives, and I guess that's what we're asking for before we make a decision.
I'm sorry, can you just summarize that one more time? I just want to make sure that I understand what you were saying one more. I apologize.
I don't know if I can do them.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is that you can now open a discussion, because we've raised the issue of a demo and a reconstruction, okay? I've also looked at the drawing here, and Harry has mentioned if you move that house a little bit towards Franklin Avenue, almost in a diagonal manner, we could get more buffer, and you could retain the size of the house that you want without disrupting the property itself too much. It's going to disrupt it somewhat, but not too much. So that's another alternative that you can raise. I personally don't understand why they would want to move the house and put a second story on it. I mean, that,
They didn't want to move the house to begin with.
Yeah, we asked them to.
You guys asked, I'm
Right,
sorry,
right,
this
right.
board requested that we move the house.
right.
So that was not part of it.
But I meant,
Right.
okay, I could understand them moving the house, but to move it and put a second story on, I mean, Harry says it's not a big deal, and I agree. It's not, you can do it. You have money, you have people, you can do it.
So
but-
the order of events was, we proposed the house in its location to raise it up, make it FEMA compliant. We got to the public hearing stage, and we said, okay, we'd like to put a second story on because we'd submitted in December 2024. It took until whatever in order to get to this point. The clients, without me being able to actually discuss it with them, said, please propose a second story on top of it. And we said, okay, so that's what we did. And then this board asked, please consider moving the house back. So that was the order of events, so just so that you,
All right, well, I think you can go back now with a lot of alternatives for them. And I think you are in a more, I don't want to use the word powerful, but more assertive position now that we've opened all these issues. They may not want to hear it, but at least you can present it.
I appreciate that. Okay, so the other option would be to just request that you close the hearing, and then I just don't know what your, obviously, and you wouldn't be able to say that here. I'm just summarizing it so that I can then go back and say that I've done this. I don't know what your decision would be. I don't know what's going to happen as a result of that. because
Harvey
you
made a
have,
very good suggestion. He usually does. That might be something you want to consider.
We don't like to just close a public hearing after one set of plans and no alternatives to be presented. I mean, if you would go back, discuss what some of the options that we were discussing tonight, and you may come up with something new. If you want to discuss it with them and come back, at least come up with some alternatives. We don't like to just close a hearing and then later on be told we didn't give you a chance to present alternatives. Because we want to give you a chance to present them. Even if your alternative is keeping it exactly the way you have it with some modifications that allow us, that are, taking care of some of our concerns with the logistics and the viability of the building the way it is now to be modified to meet current building standards. But we would hate to have just close it tonight and have anyone think that we didn't give you a chance to present alternatives. So go back to your client, see what they might be willing to consider, and come back and say they're not considering anything, or they're considering X, Y, Z, or some plans.
I do have to state that this is the second round of our alternatives that we have provided. And then the board would have had also 2 additional alternatives based on the alternatives that Marty Shea had provided. So this board has seen 4 different alternatives in addition to the original one. So I just wanted to assert that we have been at this for a while.
But this is only the second
we're
public
not-
hearing, so, I mean, honestly, publicly, this is only the second time we've been presented with
I understand.
anything. I mean, what happens behind the scenes before it becomes a viable public hearing date and everything, we don't always necessarily see all of the progress that you're making with staff. But we'll see it from public hearing time, and this is only the second time.
Okay.
The reason I spent that much time talking about this
Which I appreciate.
is that I can see where you can get the same size house or even a bigger house used more efficiently at less cost. And I think it's something that I would be interested in if I was doing the project. You've got to make that determination for your client. And if you wanted to go back and consider, or at least broach that with them to see if that's something they want to work on, because once you start with a brand-new house, there's a whole lot more possibilities. We can hear you in 1 month. In 2 weeks, we don't want to have any more applications on because we've got
No, 19th or
a lot of stuff
later.
going on that meeting, but
November 19th.
we generally
November
don't
19th
have a
Or
real
the 3rd or
full,
the 17th of December.
we haven't had a real
Next
full
meeting's
schedule
fall.
most of the time, so we can
Next
move
meeting
this
is
right
fall.
along.
Okay.
And especially if you do, if you does want to do something a little different, present it so that Marty can take a look at it before our meeting, we very likely could close it next time.
I appreciate your input. I appreciate having the opportunity to discuss this with the board. And so please adjourn it and, until the 19th, and we'll come back with some alternative.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this application? Or on Zoom?
Motion to adjourn to the 19th
November?
of,
November?
yeah, well, it can't be October. The 19th of November.
Could be December, you have to be specific. Sorry.
It's been moved, is there a second?
Second.
All
Second.
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Anybody keeping theirs, or are you turning them? Okay, oh, you got them, Rand, thank you.
All right, well, we only have 3. Wait a second, just have to take a little break from
Stretch. 7th inning stretch, maybe a 1st inning stretch. You still there?
He's on Zoom. Mike Walsh, he's on Zoom.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
As soon as George comes back, we'll have a quorum again, and we can open the next public hearing, or the next hearing.
I guess he wanted to go to November 13th, but we're not having a meeting that day, so we changed it to November 22nd.
Can you hear me,
The
Matt?
meeting's November 19th, but he's thinking second and fourth.
The next public hearing is WB 24001 Farron Farvid. And I believe, yes, well, there was a picture on Zoom.
So he's up top,
Okay,
right-hand corner.
okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Michael Walsh. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sounds good.
Great. Matt Ivins is also here, and he's going to handle the exhibits. We filed an exhibit package with the board, and the application has numerous exhibits. So we're going to briefly walk through our case, the application, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This started with my client, Farron Farvid, who I think is going to be online tonight. I think he's watching. Doing his own research, and he found that the lot next door, adjacent to this, was the subject of a letter of non-jurisdiction. Tonight we're dealing with 15 Windermere Close, Hampton Bays. Right next door, 19 Windermere Close was a case that was before your board for a few years, the Schlegel case. And in essence, this is exactly the same application, the same request for relief, the same proofs that we put in. And what we're looking for is two things. We're looking for a letter of no jurisdiction of applying the bulkhead exemption, which is 50 feet from a bulkhead that's existed since the adoption of the ordinance in 1993. In this particular case, this property has been bulkheaded since 1980, when the subdivision was first filed, subdivision of Windermere. Matt, if you could put up on the screen, if you could share the screen, you could put up that first letter of no.
Yeah, it should be a board. Good evening, board. Can you see that?
It's difficult to read.
Or I can zoom in.
Matt, if you just coast through that, the point is that there's a prior letter of jurisdiction. We're taking the position it's on all fours similar, the Farvid application to the Schlegel application, and I'll show you why in a moment.
Is that for the Schlegel property or for this property?
That's correct. That's for the Schlegel property. And that's part of the record. I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention at the outset, because it forms the basis of this application. Matt, if you go to Exhibit B, please.
That's up.
Okay. This is the application for the letter of no jurisdiction. There was a survey attached to it that depicted what we were looking for in terms of the setback. Again, there's a bulkhead. There's no wetlands landward of that bulkhead. There's a trustee permit in place, and we have two bases for requesting the letter of no jurisdiction. Number one, we have a trustee's permit, and we'd like to apply the trustee's exemption. If you could turn to that, please, Matt.
About the trustee's exemption?
Keep going down. Go to
Okay.
Exhibit C, please.
All right, well, this is Exhibit C.
Okay. Exhibit C is the denial. Marty Shea denied the permit, the request for the LNJ. He set his reasons forth in that very short 2-paragraph letter. He basically said you were previously regulated. We took jurisdiction within the area 50 feet landward of the bulkhead. Therefore, we're going to continue to take jurisdiction. The entirety of your lot is within the permitting jurisdiction of the Conservation Board. Next exhibit, Matt, D. We then filed an appeal of that determination. Your regulations require that we appeal to your board if your environmental analyst, in this case, Mr. Shea, denies our letter of no jurisdiction. We set forth in that letter the reasons that we believe we qualify. The bulkhead and returns are 100 feet or more in length. There are no wetlands landward of the bulkhead on the subject parcel. The bulkhead returns were built prior to August 13, 1993. We're only dealing with this property. We're not asking for anything else. And the town did not properly apply the bulkhead exemption, and they did not apply the trustees exemption under Chapter 325, which is an additional exemption. If the activities, if any activities are require a trustee's permit and are indeed permitted by the trustees, that takes that portion of the property out of your jurisdiction. We also included the trustee's permit, the New York State DEC permit, as Exhibit F, G, and H. The NYS DEC permit. If you could go back to that subdivision, please, Matt. Right above it. This is the 1980 subdivision that I referred to. And Matt, if you can just take a minute to show the board where the pre-existing bulkhead existed and the time frame that we're talking about. That is approximately 1980, which is well before the 1993 bulkhead exemption regulation date. See that, Matt?
Yep, I got that.
So what you're looking at here is the 1980 subdivision map, fully bulkheaded this property, all along Wells Creek. The development scheme here clearly called for waterfront lots, bulkheaded. The Conservation Board, by the way, existed in 1980. They had an opportunity to weigh in 1980. Whether they did or not is not apparent from the subdivision map. But I haven't found anything at this point that indicates that they burden this property with any covenant restriction or otherwise as part of the subdivision filing. That becomes important because it's our position that the development scheme was set back in 1980. The property was fully bulkheaded, and by virtue of that fact alone, going forward, we have the benefit of the bulkhead exemption. If you can go to the next exhibit, please. This is a certificate of compliance for the bulkhead when it was upgraded and rebuilt in 2022. What you'll notice here is what the trustees approved was the installation of a bulkhead and the installation of two 20-foot returns, 20 foot from the bulkhead. And if we look at the schematic and the survey, what you'll see is, in addition to the 20-foot return, they imposed a 10-foot buffer, which was to be planted with beach grass. So the trustees essentially permitted 20 plus feet. In Marty's memo, he opines that it's approximately 25 to 30 feet that was disturbed as a consequence of the trustees' permit. It's our position that a minimum of 20 feet, as depicted on this plan that was approved by the trustees, was regulated by the trustees. It was permitted by the trustees. And because of those activities being permitted by the trustees, it takes it out of the jurisdiction of your board. You have no jurisdiction whatsoever within the first 20 feet of that property as measured from the bulkhead. If you can go to the next exhibit, please, Matt. This is the New York State DEC permit. We included that in the record. It mirrors the trustees' permit. It's the exact same permit. Same schematics, same plans, same survey. It shows, by the way, it also shows the dead men, which are 16 feet from the inside of the bulkhead, and the tie rods. And if you measure from the outside of the bulkhead to the inside of those, the landward side of those dead men, that'll fill up the approximately 20 feet, if not more. And Marty mentions that it's between Marty Shea, between 25 and 30 feet of disturbance from the bulkhead that was permitted by the trustees. If you can go to the next exhibit, please, Matt.
Hold on one sec. Okay.
This is Marty's report, and we read it pretty thoroughly. This is the 2024 report. When we appealed to your board, he put in a report explaining his position on the matter. which is essentially, he visited the site on 3 occasions: March 28th, 2024, May 8th, 2024, June 6th, 2024. By the way, we checked the weather. Those 3 dates were marked by probably the heaviest 3 days of rain in the entire spring season. We also picked up the fact that he visited the site again on August 19th. Again, an extremely heavy period of rain. There was apparently standing water on the ground. And when we figured that out and we checked the precipitation data, which Matt did, Matt went back out there on what we'll call moderate or dry days, and he found something completely and utterly different. The ground was dry. Your environmental analyst put in photographs of standing water. Matt took the exact same photographs, same locations. And what did we find? Dry as a bone. So I submit to you that you cannot assert jurisdiction when you have the town going out there on only rainy days. Obviously, the intent here was to bulk up the record with proof that we don't believe that you have a right to rely on. Number one. Number two, it doesn't show the true state of the site. Number three, we believe it's geared towards penalizing, quite frankly, the landowner. To go out there on these rainy periods, take photographs of standing water. I suspect from Manorville Road to Town Line Road, if you had a day of rain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches over a period of 3 days, the entire township's going to be wet. You're going to have waterlogged soils no matter where you go. The front lawn of the town hall where you're sitting would be wet. So we're asking you to disregard this proof. We think it's over the top. We think it's overreaching, and we were quite shocked, frankly, when we figured out what was going on here. That the only days that the lot was inspected were these extremely rainy days, periods of heavy rain. It's all there. Matt checked the data. We've got the photography, and that seems to be what Marty based his determination on. He also bases it on the fact that there's Phragmites on the site. We all know what Phragmites are. This board has many boards in the town, not only your board, has determined that these invasive Phragmites are all over the town. They don't necessarily grow in wetlands per se, but under your code, they're a wetlands indicator only if they're within 24 inches of water. The survey data that was submitted with the original application, in fact, survey data going back, which apparently was missed on the first applications on this property, show that the groundwater is 3 feet or more below the surface of the land. Not any different from Schlegel. Schlegel got the LNJ based upon those facts. Phragmites have nothing to do with the matter. There's no other wetlands. We've included the methodology that Marty's supposed to use when he goes out and flags freshwater wetlands. We've been through this before. We've included the New York State DEC handbook and the methodology for flagging wetlands. You have to locate the 100% wetlands area, then 75%, then 50%, and the wetlands line is always 50%, the midpoint of the 50% line. We've been through this many times. We've included it in our submissions to your board. So at this point, what we're asking for, if you can go to the survey, Matt, with the 50-foot bulkhead exemption depicted. This is the survey that we submitted with the LNJ application and then with the appeal. And what we're looking for is for you to apply the 50-foot bulkhead exemption. Again, within that 50-foot is the 20-foot already regulated by the trustees, which is outside your jurisdiction in the first instance. Your line of jurisdiction is depicted on that survey. That's what we're asking for today. We did attempt over the last several months to present alternatives. I know that the chairman consistently applies the code and he asks, are there any alternatives here? I understand why your board does that. It's a thoughtful process. I understand that. And we try to cooperate in that effort. And we have the last version of what we submitted, if I can show you that. Matt, do you have that?
Yep.
This is a sketch that we proposed. It's essentially the same survey, but what we proposed was adding an additional 50 feet of buffer, even though we don't have to. Add an additional 50 feet of buffer, non-disturbance, non-fertilization, and call it a day. That would be 100-foot setback from the bulkhead, where 50 foot's required under the code. Unfortunately, that was rebuffed by Mr. Shea, and we didn't get anywhere. That's why we're before your board. We appeal to your good natures and your fairness and your just application of the regulations. If you go through this file, which is extremely thick at this point, at the end of the day, I'm sure you'll conclude that the client, in this case, Mr. Farber, has a right to the exemption, both the trustee exemption and the 50-foot bulkhead exemption. That's our case. If you have any questions, we're more than happy to answer. But
Just want to make some clarity here for the board, for the benefit of the board. We are here for the purposes of determining if the Conservation Board has jurisdiction of 200 feet in this property or just 50 feet as the applicant is requesting. So in terms of practical alternatives, that's not applicable in this particular case because it's not looking for a permit for other things. This is a determining simply where the jurisdiction is. Just so you think about it consistently, so we're all thinking about it the same way. So now I'd like Marty to speak and give his testimony.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. I'll be somewhat brief. As was spoken to by the applicant, there is a report that I filed on record in response to the wetland determination appeal stated June 17th, 2024. The technical report is 10 pages, but with the attachments, it's about 120 pages. The report speaks to the presence of extensive town regulated wetlands landward of the bulkhead that meet the statutory definition of wetlands set forth in Chapter 325 as a consequence of both the wetland indicative vegetation and frequency of flooding. In fact, the photo essay, which was alluded to, shows that not only is the property often flooded, but it takes some time for that water to drain, showing that we don't have, that at times we have a very shallow groundwater and we don't have real good soil infiltration. The report speaks to the history of this property. The property is not only encumbered by a covenant that requires that the on-site wetlands, as previously identified by the town and surveyed, be preserved, but it also establishes a significant naturally vegetated buffer at the site. The Conservation Board had issued the permit, the wetland permit for construction of the residence that was conditioned upon the establishment of this extensive wetland preservation area and naturally vegetated buffer that generally extends right up to the rear pool and patio area just seaward of the residence. The property conditions have changed significantly, not only as a consequence of the trustees' permitted bulkhead replacement, but also because virtually the entirety of the covenanted buffer, which took in coastal woodlands, landward of the wetlands, has been cleared, it has been filled, and is being maintained as lawn. When it came to my attention that the covenanted areas and the covenants run with the properties, so they are legally binding, that they had been cleared and were being disturbed and being filled, the landowner was cited. When the home and pool were initially permitted, the property was under a former ownership. However, when the clearing and filling commenced, the property, it was around the time that the property was in the present ownership. As a consequence, the landowner was cited. He was directed to file an administrative wetland permit application with a restoration plan for the site, which he was amenable to. He filed that application. I did issue an administrative wetland permit with a comprehensive restoration plan for the property. Rather than proceed with that restoration, the applicant proceeded to continue to disturb the restricted, encumbered wetlands and wetland buffers on the property, so that, again, virtually the entirety of the area that was covenanted as a naturally vegetated buffer has since been cleared, converted to lawn with only a few remaining trees. Some of those remaining younger trees are in poor health, likely partly due to the extensive unauthorized fill that was placed at the property. Just to include these in the record, in addition to the site photos that are attached to my June 17, 2024 report, I also have additional site photos that were taken on other dates since the release of this report. And my last visit to the property was a week ago today, when I took these additional pictures. And what is most important about these pictures is they're showing the large area of covenanted naturally vegetated buffer that has been converted to fill, maintain lawn. As indicated, there are only a few trees that remain at the site. So the site conditions have been somewhat of a moving target, since notwithstanding that the landowner had filed for an administrative permit to restore the property and had forwarded a restoration plan that was approved. Thereafter, the applicant proceeded with clearing, deposition of fill, and other disturbance in violation of the conditions of that permit. So the report that is on the record yet supports the regulation of the entirety of the property pursuant to Chapter 325 because of the presence of extensive town-regulated wetlands, landward of the bulkhead. And in closing, the report recommends that this board continue to support and defend that surveyed wetland boundary, and that the applicant file either a modified administrative wetland permit or a new conservation board wetland permit application in order to get the necessary authorization to reclaim the covenanted areas that have been disturbed. Although there are many areas of concern on the property, the most recent photos also show filled sand path through the wetlands and is wider than the maximum allowable 4 feet. There are a significant amount of photos on record as attached to my report, and afterwards that also show the significant amounts of fill that were placed right up to the town identified inland wetland edge. The fill is between 1 and 2 feet. It appears that that fill was placed in order to convert the affected area to a level lawn so that it could be used as exterior lawn space for many purposes. So rather than speak further about the June 17, 2024 Environment Division report, I would encourage all board members to thoroughly read that report before rendering a decision on this appeal. But the report in closing is not supporting of the applicant's request for a letter of non-jurisdiction for those areas landward of 50 feet of the bulkhead. When the applicant had more recently provided the sketch for consideration of, I don't know how else to describe it, a compromise plan for the site. It was very rough and was not the kind of sketch that could really be used for technical review purposes. I don't believe it was to scale, and so I simply indicated to the applicant that that was not sufficient for me to change my position as expressed by the report. Thank you.
Marty, just one real quick statement. Mr. Walsh made comments about you picking days where it was particularly wet to take pictures. I'm just wondering, could they have picked days that were particularly dry to take their pictures?
Well, without reviewing the weather records, and I think the applicant may have provided some of that information, I couldn't speak, I couldn't respond to that question as to what the weather conditions were like. You know, okay.
It's just trying to make me feel good.
And lastly, I just wanted to offer a quick comment regarding the trustees' permit. While it is agreed that where a trustee's permit is required, a town wetland permit is not required. The concern, of course, as spoken to by my report, is that trustees in permitting an extensive area of backfill that extends as far as 20 or more feet landward of the bulkhead, that they exceeded their authority. As you know, generally their authority only extends 10 feet landward of the bulkhead. That being said, it is not my goal to have the trustees' permitted bulkhead modified, or necessarily to ask that any of the backfill that was placed beyond the extent of trustees' jurisdiction adjacent to the bulkhead be removed. Primarily looking for the remainder of that property to be restored back to natural vegetation, for any unauthorized fill to be removed, so that the pre-existing grades can be reestablished, so that the property can be brought back into compliance with the covenants and the prior permits and approvals of this board, as well as the administrative wetland permit. Thank you. And one other comment, and this is spoken to at length by my report. Many of our wetland areas do not have permanent surface flooding. And that's why it can be very helpful to visit these sites after rains, to see whether or not they drain quickly, or whether or not they hold standing water for some time. At the time of some of the site visits, the water depth, the surface water depth was at least 1 feet or greater. So this is a property that is marked by very frequent surface flooding. Even on a dry day, you see the evidence of that flooding. And when you have an area that's dominated by Phragmites, in deciding whether or not the area of Phragmites should be regulated as wetlands, you, upon field assessment, look to see if there are obvious signs of frequent flooding. And you will find those signs when you walk the site. I also noticed recently, and although it was only a quick qualitative assessment of the property, it looks like the Phragmites marsh areas are being colonized by a lot more diverse tidal wetlands indicative plants. So I am seeing changes, what appear to be changes in the nature and composition of the vegetation at the property. Not that any of that would change the surveyed wetland boundaries, but it's another indication of the the frequent wet conditions that you have on this property landward of the bulkhead. Thank you.
Marty, just to clarify, that last part you just said is not in your report from last year. Would you just clarify, you testified just now that you saw some wetland vegetation. Would you give the location that's landward of the bulkhead?
Yes, landward of the bulkhead. Yes. And that was just a qualitative observation. I didn't, a week ago, I didn't walk the entirety of the property. I just noticed that in walking down to the bulkhead, that there appear to be some changes occurring in the composition of the Phragmites marshes, in that it appears that there is additional tidal wetland indicative plants that are colonizing the area and appearing in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. So, Mr. Walsh, you gave some testimony. Marty gave some testimony. Do you want to say anything more?
No. We'd like you to close the hearing if possible. Put it down for determination on the 19th or as soon as you can make a determination. In the meantime, if, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to direct us, as you usually do, to see if we can seek some compromise, we'd be glad to do that. But we'd like to move towards a determination because I see a certain intransigence on the part of Mr. Shea, which I simply can't get around, quite frankly. I'm just being honest with your board. But if you'd close the hearing, render a determination. In the meantime, if you'd direct us to try to seek a compromise, we would certainly do that, as you usually direct us to. And we comply.
So, as I spoke of earlier, this is an application before us to render a decision as to the jurisdiction on this property. We have heard testimony from the applicant and from the staff. If there's, and the applicant is wishing us to close this hearing. If the board has heard enough to render a decision, and we're not in need of more information, it's appropriate to close the hearing. And then we will have 45 days to render a decision. If there are any more questions, and if not, before I skip an important part, is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this application?
Motion to close the public hearing.
I said second.
Oh, didn't hear. Didn't hear you.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Does the matter get set down for a date certain, or it just is left open without a date?
It's left open. We have a very big agenda next meeting. We may not get it done next meeting. So we don't say when we're going to do it, but the law gives us 45 days. We will do it as soon as we can, as you requested. But I'm not going to tie down the staff, because I may not be able to do.
Thank you very much for your time.
Advisory reports. 810 Lumber Lane site plan application.
Good evening again, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This is a pending site plan application for our property at 810 Lumber Lane in the hamlet of Bridgehampton. There are two recommended advisory comments. The first is that as the affected land has already been established as an agricultural reserve pursuant to the filed subdivision map of M4 Lumber Holdings LLC, and is recognized as farmland of statewide importance, the proposed agricultural building and fence line installation is consistent with the intended beneficial use. And second, based upon an Environment Division field assessment completed on Wednesday, October 15, 2025, there are no significant environmental concerns regarding this site plan application.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? 94 Dune Road owner LLC, draft environmental impact statement.
The 94 Dune Road owner LLC property is located at 94 Dune Road in East Quogue on the bay side of Dune Road. It contains considerable tidal wetlands. The site plan application, which is the subject of the draft environmental impact statement, proposes change from one non-conforming use to a second non-conforming use. Currently, the property is characterized by an existing restaurant. There is considerable parking areas and decking areas. There are docks and jet ski floats, and there are tennis courts that have since been abandoned that are being used as overflow parking. So the applicant is looking for planning board approval to demolish virtually the entirety of the existing site improvements, with the exception of the existing bulkheads, docks, and jet ski floats, and to construct 25 elevated two-story townhouses or condominium units. Those structures would be elevated on pilings as required by FEMA, because the entirety of the property is seaward of the limit of moderate wave action. As such, any new construction needs to conform to BE standards. The attached condo units would be two-story units. There would be garage and storage space beneath the finished first floor of those units. The majority of the units would have roof decks. There are also other amenities like spiral staircases. As part of the pending site plan application, the applicant is also seeking approval to construct a community pool and cabana at the site. The applicant is offering to abandon the existing sanitary system and to construct a sewage treatment plant. The applicant has not only pending application with the planning board, but also with the zoning board of appeals in order to convert the site from one non-conforming use to another non-conforming use. The property is actually zoned R80. It's zoned for one single-family residence. And I say one residence because of the constraints of the wetlands. They take in about 2/3 or more of this property. The plans for redevelopment of the property would not be compliant with Chapter 325, as the construction would of the units would occur approximately 75 feet landward of wetlands, rather than at the required minimum 100 feet, and the swimming pool would be constructed 50 feet landward wetlands. The buffers that are being proposed range from 50 feet to 75 feet. The requirement by code is a minimum of 75 feet. There is a public hearing scheduled by the planning board for tomorrow night. It is likely that the hearing is going to be closed tonight, so it is essential that the board act on the advisory comments that have been drafted, so that those can, as presented or amended, so that those can be forwarded to the planning board tomorrow morning and become part of the public record for tomorrow night's hearing. So I'll try and go through these recommended comments as quickly as possible. We do have a copy of the site plan on the wall. I'm going to hand that up to the board.
George? Sit on it.
I handed that up because it's virtually impossible to see that site plan from where you're sitting. So the recommended advisory comments are as follows. First, the statement is made that it is crucial that the direction of coastal land use planning and redevelopment in our town be steered towards strengthening resiliency in the face of climate change and warming temperatures. The plans to build 25 high-rise condominium units on flood/storm vulnerable, environmentally sensitive land zoned for one single-family residence is misguided and fails to sufficiently acknowledge the need to better our waterfront building practices, global rise in sea level, and increased risk of extreme weather. Second, what's at stake is public safety, as well as the Shinnecock Bay and the Atlantic Barrier, a biodiversity hotspot brimming with fish and wildlife, and essential to our healthy economy and way of life. Through land preservation, water quality improvement initiatives, shellfish and submerged aquatic vegetation recovery efforts, and local wetland regulations, The town has invested greatly in protecting and restoring this highly valued ecosystem, the importance of which has been widely acknowledged and acclaimed by both state and federal governments. Thirdly, based upon a review of the draft environmental impact statement, there is an enormous amount of work that yet needs to be done with regards to scaling back of the proposed intensity of rebuilding at the subject property so that any generational changes that are made at the site don't reverse land preservation efforts and the town's hard-won progress towards enhancing coastal resilience along Dune Road and the Atlantic Barrier. Such reversals as a consequence of greater intensification of land use within this most environmentally sensitive region of the town would come at a time when we have crucial years left to change the current trajectories of continued shore modification, overbuilding, habitat loss, bulkheading, landborne pollution, human disturbance, dredging, and pleasure boating effects on seagrass beds, surface water quality, marshlands, shorebirds, raptors, sea turtles, horseshoe crabs, wading birds, and other wildlife that are threatening to unravel the sustainability, long-term recovery, and biodiversity of the Shinnecock Bay and Atlantic Barrier ecosystems. Fourth, notwithstanding the applicant's offer of increased wetland building setbacks as compared to the current conditions, along with their offer to establish minimum wetland buffers and to build a sewage treatment plan, to create a small area of new wetlands, as well as to landscape with native vegetation, and to abate stormwater from the site. The redevelopment plans, including the planned retention of the entirety of the existing bulkheaded shorefront, as well as the existing 16 boat slips and 10 jet ski floats, together with the applicant's general dismissal of the project's ill effects on the environment and the availability of more favorable, practicable, less damaging alternatives, hits at the bedrock of the town wetland law and town coastal policies, which, in the interest of fostering wetland and ecosystem recovery, directs landowners who are challenged by wetland constraints and flood vulnerability to evaluate and come forward with creative approaches to mitigate adverse impacts. Foremost of our concerns is that as mentioned previously, foremost of our concerns is that the site plan yet calls for construction of the dwelling units and swimming pool at setbacks of 75 feet and 50 feet from wetlands, respectively, where 100 feet is required by Chapter 325 of the town code. Such request is troubling, as any granting of the relief would have adverse effects on wetlands, fisheries, wildlife, and surface water quality. Maximize wetland buffers and wetland building setbacks are not only needed to protect the environment and allow for landward migration of wetlands with sea level rise, but also to reduce risk of flood damage and contamination of Shinnecock Bay. 6, the alternative of redevelopment and strict adherence with the required minimum 100-foot wetland construction and 75-foot wetland buffer setback requirements throughout the entirety of the property, notwithstanding the differing bulkheaded and natural shorelines, thus needs to be fully evaluated with alternate drawings and sufficient information provided as part of the DEIS alternative analysis in order to allow for a comparative review and rendering of a decision as to whether or not the standards set forth in Chapter 325-9, which other standards for issuing a wetland permit can be met. As spoken to by Chapter 325, practicable alternatives that meet the standards set forth in Section 325-9A are presumed to be available unless the applicant clearly demonstrates otherwise. 7, to maximize success at wetlands and barrier duneland protection and recovery, mitigation of impacts therefore needs to take the direction of decreasing the proposed significant increase in site nonconformity, either by rebuilding in accordance with the applicable zoning of R80 or by exploring alternate, less environmentally compromising uses for the property, which would significantly scale back the footprint of construction and land disturbance, or simply by reducing and potentially reconfiguring the currently planned number of housing units. Other options for dramatically realizing shore and ecosystem recovery could also be evaluated, including, among others, removal and elimination of at least partial bulkheads, boat slips, and jet ski floats, followed by natural shore stabilization and restoration, and/or better balancing of development and environmental protection goals by dedication of a sizable part of the property to perpetual preservation. 8, additional strategies that would better insulate the project from future storm and flood hazards, as well as lessen risk of environmental contamination, include abandonment of the plans for the easterly stormwater overflow drainage swale and dry wells within the bounds of the proposed wetland buffers, in favor of siting all subsurface drainage chambers landward of the buffer. Second, relocation of the proposed swimming pool at minimum wetland setback of 100 feet landward of the bulkhead, and avoidance of excessive and hazardous material storage space in garages, which are being proposed nearly 5 feet below the applicable AE12 elevation and beneath the pile elevated housing units. 9, exposing the pool and ground level garages of 25 units to flooding is worrisome, as such practices could, in the aftermath of a hurricane or severe storm, expose Shinnecock Bay and its fragile ecosystem to chemical-laden storm debris with pollution of surface waters, refuse strewn across marshlands, and toxicity to aquatic life, with potentially devastating toll on the environment and human health, requiring years of cleanup and remediation. 10, to guard against such impacts, there need to be mandated standards for residential hazardous material storage within the planned garages of all housing units, as well as for sheds, pool cabana, the STP, control building, and other storage areas of facilities, requiring elevation of fuels, pool chemicals, oil, fertilizers, pesticides, and household cleaners on elevated shelves, racks, or platforms above base flood elevation. Hazardous materials must be properly contained and secured with wall or floor anchoring of storage racks in order to prevent displacement and potential contamination of wetlands and surface waters at times of flooding and severe storm events. 11, based upon review of the site plan, the proposed sewage treatment plant control building, which contains all the mechanical equipment for the STP, does not appear to comply with FEMA base flood elevation +2 requirements of the town and the state building code. Accordingly, the applicant needs to address how they intend to remedy this conflict, as well as mitigate the potential significant adverse impacts to wetlands and surface waters associated with possible failure of the sewage treatment plant during storm events. 12, given that the applicant is yet proposing a community swimming pool approximately 50 feet landward of wetlands. A construction cross-view section needs to be provided depicting the intended separation between the base of the pool, swimming pool and groundwater in order to determine whether or not dewatering will be necessary. 13, any approvals for a pool construction need to be strictly conditioned upon the installation, operation, and maintenance of a no chlorine pool filtration or a low chlorine or saltwater pool filtration system. 14, all swimming pool discharge needs to be directed to dry wells located at least 100 feet landward of wetlands for immediate on-site recharge consistent with town pool drainage storage requirements. 15, as a matter of policy, the Conservation Board prohibits dewatering, particularly for swimming pool construction, as such activity can have large adverse impacts to wetlands and surface waters. Consistent with this policy, again, pool construction cross-view profile is needed, verifying that the base of the swimming pool, inclusive of any required grade beams, will be elevated a minimum of 2 feet above highest anticipated groundwater as confirmed by recent test hole data, and that's in order to eliminate the need for dewatering as well as to prevent potential structural damage associated with storm-borne flooding and related hydrostatic pressures. Such redesign will also aid in reducing risk of bay and wetlands contamination from chlorine and other pool chemicals. 16, the existing and proposed topography are yet barely legible on the site plan. As such, the site plan needs to be revised to clearly depict the existing and proposed contours at 2-foot intervals. 17, preservation of the on-site wetlands and naturally vegetated buffers needs to be assured by establishing conservation easements. 18, and here I reference the applicant's landscape plan. I indicated that it needs to be revised as the plant quantities and plant pot sizes which are being proposed for installation, which include 2-inch plugs within the required wetland preservation buffer and planned landscape areas fall far shy of the minimum coverage and container sizes required for the purposes of native revegetation and wetland/buffer restoration, and will not achieve the goal of reestablishing contiguous healthy cover of native or natural vegetation within the designated revegetation areas. And then I follow with recommendations for the minimum container sizes for the native plants. And lastly, 19, I indicate that in summation, there are without question viable alternatives that would better protect the environment and realize continued significant economic return. The veiled threat, the no action alternative, that is that the existing restaurant and marina uses will be retained and continued, or that alternative approvals will be sought for replacing the restaurant with a private yacht club, or for a reduced density of 20 condo units rather than 25, or for one house with an expansive chemically laden lawn without measurable, comparable environmental gains. False dichotomies. There are, of course, other more innovative approaches and viable options wherein the landowner can work with the town to forge a much more environmentally compatible plan for this site. The town has reached milestones in land preservation and bettering the bay and barrier ecosystem and quality of life on Dune Road and along our coast. The current project plans for 94 Dune Road would necessitate the granting of significant relief from the required wetland construction buffer setbacks, and thus undo the town's environmental progress along the Atlantic barrier. For these reasons, The applicant's redevelopment proposal cannot be supported at this time. Moreover, we respectfully ask that the applicant further evaluate practicable alternatives in strict conformity with the requirements of Chapter 325 and the town's building and zoning code. Should you have any questions or need further guidance, please do not hesitate to contact the board.
Two little things.
Yes.
Okay, it's very well done, it's excellent, Marty. When you were reading, this is number 4, you read not was.
I am still on my meeting. I'll try to get out of here.
Everybody's so relieved when it's not their phone.
I'm sorry, I have an emergency at home, so I have to leave.
Okay.
And if you want to maybe send me an email.
Okay.
With those suggested revisions, I would,
Leave that, we'll get all that.
all right. Thank you.
Good luck, Marty.
We can finish up. So why don't you articulate those for the record?
Okay, so, number 4, notwithstanding the applicant's offer of increased wetland building setbacks in yurts, comma, minimum wetland buffers, et cetera. Marty had read that notwithstanding the applicant's offer of increased wetland building setbacks compared to the current conditions. And I like that because the applicant could be saying, well, we're increasing the setbacks, but it's not clear. They're increasing them compared to what exists now, but that is not in compliance with Chapter 325. So it's just that little phrase. And he read it, so I know he was thinking it.
Yeah.
And many times, you have in your mind what's there because it's in your mind,
Yeah.
and you read it, but it's not there. So I think that's exactly what he meant. And then the other was number 7, where he's says to maximize success at the wetlands and barrier dune land protection and recovery, mitigation of impacts therefore needs to take the direction of decreasing the proposed significant increase in site nonconformity. And he goes down, and in the middle he says, or simply by reducing and potentially reconfiguring the currently planned numbers of housing units. Do you see that there? And that, I think, opens up the door. If we just decrease it from 25 to 20 or something, it's not so egregious. So when he mentioned in paragraph 3 about decreasing the proposed intensity of rebuilding, he brought in that we would have to still follow, Chapter 325 and the other restrictions. That's not here in this paragraph. So I wouldn't want somebody picking it up out of context.
Did you get those points? The gist of them? Could you write that up more clearly and send an email
Okay,
by 6 o'clock tomorrow morning?
yes. I can't sleep. Anyway.
Okay. Okay.
So I send those to Marty and also to you? Yeah, okay.
Is there a motion to send these comments to the planning board as amended?
But I just have a question. Did anybody else pick up anything or want to add anything?
No, it was a very concise report, very,
Okay.
yeah, very,
Motion to send these comments to the planning board.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And now for the ZBA, Anthony Adino and Rosemary Adino.
You're just going to make a motion to send them?
And these are straightforward, we've seen these. Is there a motion to send this report to the ZBA.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Segundo, Ramiro, Soledana, and Fanny R. Espaillo Prado. And these are other recommendations that Marty's written up that we can, just straightforward, that we can
Motion,
pass
motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
on. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Robert Fuhr and Judith Lang.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Administrative wetland permits to be in packets, resolution of conditional approval. A 025021, Mark Charbonneau and Donna Charbonneau, the applicant requests postponement to November 5th, 2025. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025028, John F. Wallace III. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval granted to John F. Wallace III for the proposed project by the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025030, Oaktown LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval granted to Oaktown LLC for the proposed project for the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review of second determination, A 025024, William Gouger and Marilyn Gouger. This is an application that we have seen by email, so we're familiar with it. And there is sufficient information to make a determination.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolve that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025029, Joan C. Hatfield Matthews. And once again, this is an application we have seen as was sent to us. And there is sufficient information to render a decision to waive the public hearing.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing pursuant to requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8E of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025033, Gregory S. Little. The applicant requests postponement to November 5th, 2025.
Motion to postpone to November 5th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution issue modification, CB 24004B Circ, 37 Peconic Bay LLC.
Motion issue.
Second.
Resolve that a wetlands permit modification be issued to B Circ, 37 Peconic Bay LLC for the proposed project by the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution to issue modification of conditional approval.
Move
This
to,
is A 023022, Guillaume Savadier.
move to issue.
Second.
Resolve that a conditional wetland permit modification be issued to Guillaume Savadier for the proposed project by terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Opposed?
Just in time.
Thank you all.